Hello, everybody. I understand the FIFA World Cup in soccer is coming up, and whenever there's a big event like that, people start getting excited, and that means a lot of people start playing soccer. And so I have had requests put to me to produce a soccer conditioning exercise program, but I want to tell you why I will not do that. Because after almost 40 years of rehabilitating and conditioning many of the world's greatest athletes, working for professional sports teams all over the world, Olympic committees, Olympic development teams, military organizations, large corporations, I have concluded beyond a shadow of a doubt, which I concluded early in my career, that putting a general workout program out there is very, very dangerous because you do not determine whether or not the individual is ready for the type of exercise. And the internet is chock-a-block with dangerous exercises that people do, not being ready, not having any evaluation, and they get hurt. And I make a lot of money rehabilitating those very people. So, unfortunately, I benefit from a lot of the ignorance in the exercise industry, as do all CHEK professionals. So, what I chose to do today is show you a few things that are very important for soccer. I've worked with many, many soccer players in my career, elite and amateur, and I thought I would share some of the things that are important. First of all, I'd like to point out that in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, you will find a series of questionnaires. This must be one of Bill Gates' pesky flies, that will evaluate your level of stress in key body systems. And there's a score graph that will show you how much stress your body is under, and it will direct you to which chapters in the book will show you how to lower your stress. Very, very important. Now, the most important thing for a soccer player, due to the explosive dynamic movements where you have forward running, backward running, sideward running, jumping in the air, spinning, remember Pele, kicking the ball upside down. I mean, soccer is like a combination of acrobatics and dynamic movement and dance and all sorts of things thrown in together. And sometimes boxing match, at least in the stands. So when you're dealing with a sport like that, you have to look at a person's readiness with biomotor abilities. So bio means life, motor, movement. So you have issues of speed, agility, you've got flexibility, strength, power, endurance, balance, and coordination. Those are some of your key biomotor abilities. Each sport or each activity has a unique biomotor profile. So if you say, what is the requirement for flexibility, agility, speed, strength, power, ... for a gymnast, you're going to get a profile in which you have very, very high scores. So if you say 10 is the maximum requirement for flexibility, a gymnast would be at a 10. When it comes to agility, a gymnast would be at a 10. Coordination, a 10. Speed, 10. Power, 10. So now the speed of a gymnast isn't necessarily like that of a soccer player, but you get running across a mat to do triple jumps, so you need a lot of speed. But so gymnastics is an example of an extremely complex biomotor environment. But then being a power lifter, you don't need a lot of coordination. You don't need a lot of agility. You don't need a lot of flexibility. You don't need a lot of endurance. You do need a lot of strength and power, though. So if you're using a powerlifting conditioning program to improve your soccer, you're probably going to make yourself worse, not better. So the first point I'm trying to make, aside from the fact that you need to figure out where your body's under stress and then begin to balance your body, because if you don't have a healthy body to begin with, then any kind of sport-specific conditioning is already a threat to the system, because if you can't handle gravity, you certainly can't handle high-level sports conditioning. In other words, if you don't have good posture, then you're going to have muscle imbalance syndromes. That means that your body's not ready for a sport-specific conditioning program. It's common sense that's not so common, unfortunately. So when you're looking at soccer, you'd have to say, here's a simple way to do this, and I show how to do this in my advanced program design course, which is available through the Institute, but is very advanced. You'd say, okay, what's the level of speed I need in soccer? And to measure that, you say, well, who are the fastest runners in soccer? And how much does that level of speed enhance performance? So you'd say, okay, Mr. So-and-so is the fastest, and indeed he scores a lot of goals and performs well. So we'll use that as the benchmark for 10. And then you would say, okay, what's his 40-meter dash, or what's his 40-meter dash with zigzags, which would be more appropriate for soccer. So you'd set up cones and test them. They do this with rugby players and athletes of a variety of different types. And you would say, okay, well, based on this level of performance that the top soccer players have, I'm here, I need to develop my speed. And there's a difference between straight line speed and lateral acceleration. So you don't want to make the mistake of thinking this because you can run fast in a straight line. You can run fast around cones or around corners or around people. And there's been many tests done to prove that. In fact, they found that the people that can run the fastest in a straight line are rarely ever the people that can run the fastest through cones. How much flexibility do I need? What do the great soccer players have? What do I have? Where am I at on that scale? How much strength, etc., agility, flexibility, coordination, agility, endurance. Once you figure out that, then you say, okay, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm low. Then if you go to your soccer coach and say, of these 5 or 6 biomotor abilities that I score low on, which are the most important ones based on your observation of my performance that I need to develop? And any good coach will tell you, oh, you need more speed, or you need more coordination, or you need better balance, or you need better coordination. They'll know that if they're any kind of a coach at all. Now, as you can see already, there's a wide variety of exercise approaches because we're talking about very important biomotor abilities, which could be taught at a beginner level, such as just doing simple cone drills and speed, agility, and quickness drills, to someone who's just weak. For example, if you can't jump very high, practicing jumping will help a little bit, but if you don't develop more strength in the squat, you won't have the power to accelerate yourself. The good news is a squat has almost direct transfer to vertical height in the jump. Soccer players have to jump high frequently to defend the goal, to use the head to get the ball in the goal, to pass all sorts of things with their head, or jump up to reverse and kick in the air. So my point is, you can see that if I was just to put a general soccer program together, I would just be breaking every rule that I teach at the Institute for intelligent scientific program design. So what I've said so far is you got to have baseline health. You got to find out which internal systems are not healthy and need to be addressed, because remember, your glands and organs talk to and connect to all the muscles in your body. And anytime you have stress in a gland or an organ, it will shut the blood supply off or reduce blood supply to the muscles that it shares a blood supply with, so that the nutrition and the blood is going to the glands and the organs that need the help the most, and that the waste removal is optimum in those areas, and inflammation control and immune support is at its maximum. I could give you a long description of what happens when people go to the gym and their glands and organs are not healthy and they try to lift weight. In fact, if you read the book Life is Movement, published, I believe, in 1928 or 1929 by Eugene Sandow, for a long time, the world's strongest man, he says no man can achieve optimal strength until all his glands and organs are healthy. And that is bang on. But people have forgotten all about that most impressive truth. So this book shows you how to get started. It gives you very clear directions and even gives you exercises to energize your body in different regions of your body, such as glands and organ systems, so you can move forward. Now, the most important aspect for a soccer player, and I've rehabilitated piles of knee injuries and foot and ankle injuries in soccer players in my career, is the core. Your core is everything from your pelvic girdle all the way to your head. If you take the arms and legs off the body, you end up with the core. Your core is what stabilizes your spine and your pelvic girdle and your head-neck complex, but your arms and legs attach to your core. So as a general rule of thumb, your arms, your hips, knee, ankle, and foot, your shoulder, elbow, knee, wrist, and hand cannot be any more stable than your core. And this is why I say you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. The canoe represents your core. If your core is unstable and you're trying to do something like kick a soccer ball as far as you can, that's like firing a cannon. You'll tear your spine to pieces, and this is one of the reasons so many soccer players have back problems. They don't realize that their core is not working, so when they kick the ball, it causes asymmetrical forces through the lumbar spine, excessive torsion, and irritates and eventually causes injury. So you can get a number of inflammatory syndromes, facet joints, disc injuries, all sorts of unwanted problems. Now, your core is extremely responsive to your internal organs. And a very simple way to make this point is if you talk to any woman or look at any woman when she's premenstrual, her lower abdomen begins to expand because there's an inflammatory process going on in the uterus that's part of the process of shedding the lining. And so the uterus actually swells. And because the uterus is connecting to the lower abdominal muscles, it needs to make more room. If the lower abdominal muscles didn't relax, then as the uterus swells, the abdominals would compress it, which would starve it for blood and oxygen and slow the healing process, which would be, a threat to the survival of the organ and the race. So what I'm showing you here is that when you have a woman who's premenstrual, you're going to see the lower abdomen extend, and a woman is very likely to be more susceptible to core and back injuries if she's trying to do highly athletic movements, because the organs are higher on the survival totem pole than kicking a soccer ball, for example. And because it's trying to make more room, it reflexively inhibits lower abdominals, and that decreases the stability in the low back, pelvic girdle, and legs, for example. And then it'll do it all the way to the top of the chain. But since we're talking about soccer, we're talking about the primary action, which is your legs. So if you have a diet full of things that are inflaming your guts, like gluten or food additives, preservatives, colorings, emulsifiers, stabilizers, alcohol, chemicals in food that are irritating to the gut, coffee is an irritant to the gut that often causes people problems, then you're going to have inflammation, which is going to shut off the abdominal wall, which is going to destabilize the spine, which means soccer conditioning and even playing soccer puts you at a much higher risk. So that's why this book is so critical, because it teaches you how to rebuild yourself from the inside out using very common sense, straightforward, practical application techniques. Now, there's a couple of things that are very, very important with regard to playing soccer that I'd like to point out, and that relates directly to the core. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can do, and to do that, I'll take off my shirt so you can actually see what this old man is doing, and I'll show you how to do a test. So what we're going to do here is look at the coordination of the abdominal wall. Now, the muscles that flex your hip, we'll just call them the hip flexors, which is the psoas muscle is the chief one we're looking at. It runs from the lower lumbar spine down into the hip. It's the primary hip flexor. So when you kick a ball, just like a martial artist, you're using those hip flexors very strongly. But because the psoas attaches to the front of the lumbar spine, whenever you activate it, it tries to pull you into a curve. If your abdominal muscles are not capable of stabilizing the spine, then every time you go to throw a kick or kick that soccer ball, it will pull your lumbar spine forward, and that constant movement actually irritates the facet joints, can cause inflammatory syndromes in the facet joints, which leads to pain, which then leads to further shutting down of the core muscles and the back stabilizer muscles. And when you're trying to play in pain, then you get in compensation patterns, which sets you up for muscle imbalance syndromes. So it's a downhill spiral. One thing leads to another. The ankle bone connected to the knee bone connected to the hip bone, and it goes all the way through, and everybody's talking to everybody. There's no such thing as muscles and joints that aren't talking to the rest of your body. Your eyeball muscles know what your toe muscles are doing all the time, and that's scientific fact. So a simple test that you can do which is really a lower abdominal coordination test. You can put your hands, the apex of your lumbar curve, where it's at its most curve, is directly behind your belly button. So if you take your fingers, put them flat on the ground directly behind your belly button, and you can pick your feet up so your hips are at 90 degrees, press your low back into your fingers so you can actually feel your spine pressing on your fingers. Then what you want to do, you should be able, with your legs straight, to lower your legs to the floor without your back coming up off the floor, and then bring them back up. Now that would be a normal lower abdominal coordination test. You should be able, with your legs straight, lower them all the way to the floor. Now you got to be careful, you can get tricked, because as your back muscles pucker to help stabilize your spine, you can think that your spine is still pressing your fingers, but it's the muscles. It's actually better to have somebody else that knows what they're doing run the test, but if you do the test the way I'm showing you, most people out there will fail the test badly enough that they can feel their spine rising off their fingers. But ideally, you want to feel the spinous processes, the bones of your spine pressing into your fingers. Okay? Now, if you were an elite level soccer player, I'd probably want you to be able to do that test at least 50 times in a row as an exercise without your spine coming off, because think how many times a soccer player throws a kick and how far they run in a soccer game. So if you cannot pass that test, it tells me that your spine is going to be getting the hell beat out of it while you're training and competing in soccer. And then it won't just be the exercise, because a lot of people can do the exercises forever, but because their guts are inflamed, the organs are shutting the muscles off that they're trying to condition, so you can't do it unless you do it from the inside out. That's why my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, is super important. Okay? So again, you put your fingers under the belly button on the floor. You press your back into your fingers so you can feel the bones. You can overlap your fingers a little bit under there so it crosses right under the spinal bones. Press them down. You don't want your pelvis coming off the ground. You just want to press against your back, straighten your legs. This is a lower abdominal coordination test. You should be able to lower those legs without that spine coming off your fingers. Okay? Now, most people are going to fail that. I've worked with many of the greatest martial artists, soccer players, hockey players, basketball players, football players, motocross racers, you name it. Probably worked with people from that sport. And it's very rare that people pass that test. When they do, I'm pretty impressed. Why? Not because they're not strong enough, because most people's guts are so screwed up from all the garbage they're eating and drinking, it's shutting the muscles off to try to protect and heal the glands and organs on the inside. So I always have to start from the inside, and you will too. Okay? Now, what you can do is turn that into an exercise. So in order to turn it into an exercise, you want to be able to at least get about 12 to 16 repetitions. So what you can do is you can just shorten a lever arm, and you can just say, well, how about if I just leave my knees bent? And if you can do it without your spine coming off, good. Keep doing it as an exercise. See how many reps you can get before that spine starts to rise off the ground. And that gives you some level of what your strength endurance is. How strong are you, and how long can you keep it going? Now, a lot of people still won't be able to do it, so what you can do is just knees bent, go to one leg. If you can do that, alternating legs is good, because it's like a gait pattern or a running pattern. We alternate our legs. Okay? If you're still too weak, put one foot on the ground, press your spine into your fingers, lower one foot and bring it back. Work one side till it's tired. Take a rest for about a minute. Press again, work the other side till it's tired. Then you build yourself back up. So you can start from this lowest level, 1 foot on the ground. Then you can go to alternating legs. Then you can start lengthening the legs a little bit. And then ultimately you end up where you need to be. And for a high-level soccer player, I would like them to pass that test 50 times in a row. Sounds like a lot, but it's not. But if you were to count how many times an elite-level soccer player kicks a ball in a training session and how many steps they're taking at high speed, remember your legs weigh about 40% of your body weight, so each leg's about 20%. So if you take a 200-pounder or a 160-pound man, calculate what 20% of his body mass is, and then say how much stabilization do you have to have in your core to accelerate a leg explosively like that? It's a lot. And when you're doing it thousands of times in a row, 50 times up and down, it's not such a big number, okay? Now, another very simple, easy to do exercise that I teach right in, by the way, this is taught in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. The 4-point transverse abdominis, we call it the 4-point TVA activation, is something that people should do just generally as a preconditioning activation workout or warm-up exercise. It's very simple. You put your good spine in good alignment. You take a deep belly breath, and then as you exhale, purse your lips. Think of like a hunter in the jungle, like a pygmy hunter using a blow dart gun. If you put your finger in your belly button and go, you'll feel that your transverse abdominis, which is a muscle of expiration, fires. So we're going to use that same concept because when we exhale, our transverse abdominis fires, helps bring the organs back up, push the stale air out of the lungs or the exhalation out of the lungs. Okay? So we're going to inhale, put pressure in the lips, draw the belly button toward the spine as the breath comes up. Now you're going to suck your belly button up and in like you're trying to get it to kiss your spine, getting all that air out. Hold it in until you need to breathe. And do it again. Inhale. Big belly. You want 2/3 of the breath to come from the belly, only the last third from the chest. And then purse your lips. Draw your belly in like a corset. Try to get that belly button to the spine. But you should not see any substitution movements. So what that means is, if as you're bringing it in, your shoulders are hiking, or your head's dropping down, or your spine's rounding, or you're leaning backwards, those are called substitution movements, which means your brain has had to learn to use other muscles to compensate for the inability to effectively activate the core. That sets you up for muscle imbalance syndromes. That's asymmetrical contraction around joints. That leads to torsion around joints. That leads to inflammation. That causes acidic buildup. That chronic buildup of acidic metabolic waste and the inability to stabilize the joint leads to internal friction, which irritates cartilage, stresses ligaments, and leads to chronic pain, which then reflexively shuts the muscles off, which causes other muscles to have to go to work to compensate for that. And that basically just goes on and on until you're in so much pain, you got to find a CHEK professional to do a proper evaluation and look at you from the inside out and use a scientific approach to rehabilitating you. So it's a very simple exercise. You should keep good posture, shouldn't be humping or dropping, shouldn't have a lot of tension in your body, shouldn't be hiking up the shoulders. You should just be really relaxed, equal weight on the hands and knees. Inhale, big belly, bottom, first 2/3 of the breath from the belly. Belly button to spine, fold it in until you need to breathe. That gives it a little contraction time. Inhale. Pursed lips. Now, be careful too, because if you try to be a superhero and suck your belly in so hard, you'll start turning on other muscles because your body thinks you're bracing to get hit or something. So the secret is do it as firm as you can, but without feeling like you're getting co-contraction of other muscles outside the core itself. Okay? These two exercises are some of the most important exercises you can ever do. And the harder they are for you to do, the more important it is to make sure you don't have problems in your digestive system, your eliminative system, your organs of detoxification, which my book, How to Eat, Move, Be Healthy, will show you how to track down through the questionnaires. Okay? So first, we're going to develop the coordination. Now, what I didn't mention earlier is the coordination is this. When you're kicking, your hip flexors are trying to pull your spine into lordosis because, as I said, they attach to the front of the spine. But it's your abdominal muscles that pull the pelvic girdle backwards to stabilize against that. So once you get good enough at that to make it soccer specific, you can just put yourself in a neutral spine, draw your belly button in, and the same way you were doing on the floor, now you can start doing even kicking movements or running movements, but you want to keep one finger on your belly button, one finger directly behind it, which is L3, and make sure as you're doing that, you're not getting a bunch of motion. So to show you what it would look like if I was unstable and I was doing it poorly or incorrectly because my body wasn't working correctly. So done right, I draw my belly button in and I keep it stable and I move my leg. But in someone that can't do that, you'll see this happening. So the leg would tuck under, forward, under. You'll see a lot of movement here. Now, you do that several thousand times in a workout, it can cause pain. And the more pain you have, the more it shuts the muscles off, so it's a downhill spiral from there. Okay? So that's another variation on the theme. So now what I'm going to do is show you another technique that you can use. Now, if you have a string, it's helpful for this next exercise. I show how you do that right in my book, so you can easily look in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. But what I recommend is taking a kite string, a piece of kite string, tying it around your waist at the belly button level, and draw your belly button in just enough that you can see the oblique line. So if that's no tension, there's a little oblique line right there. Tie the string in a knot. Don't use a bow. You're going to have to cut it off. Otherwise, it's going to slip, okay? So you want to just bring it in just a little bit, tie it in a knot. Then you can go to a cable machine, for example. Now, you want to do this with all your exercises, squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, and twisting, because this teaches your brain to reactivate the recruitment of your stabilizer muscles in the right sequence so that you have stability before you fire, okay? So first you have to have the stabilizer muscles turn on, or you got to stabilize the canoe before you fire the gun, so to speak, okay? So what you would do is in a simple cable push exercise, and now another key point is that having tested thousands of athletes and injured people and normal people, you can have normal core recruitment on a cable push, but not a cable pull. You can have normal core recruitment on a squat, but not a lunge. You can have normal core recruitment on a squat, but not a deadlift or any combination thereof. Those muscles, those exercises where you're laying on the floor are not activating motor patterns such as squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, twisting, walking, running, jogging, or sprinting. So those are neuromuscular re-education exercises that just teach the brain how to use the muscles right. But then you've got to carry it up into standing on your feet without anything supporting you. One of the things that screws people up to no end is exercising on machines, because when you lay on a machine, your body won't turn its stabilizer on. The stabilizers won't turn on unless you need the stabilization. So if you're doing a leg press, your brain has no need to recruit your core. If you're doing a biceps curl or any of those machines where you sit on something, they have seat belts on them. It kind of tells a story. Then your brain won't turn them on. Why? The body operates on the MEN system, minimal electrical neuromuscular stimulation, which means the body is going to save energy because out in nature, you didn't know when you were going to get your next meal. So the body became very, very efficient, won't turn anything on that it doesn't have to. So when you're standing on your own 2 feet, like you do in a soccer match, then the core has to work in a functional position. So we can begin training functional movements. So we take a load. You don't want a heavy load, just enough that you can feel the load. Begin by inhaling. Draw the belly button in to activate the core. Now, you don't have to pull it in real hard. Just turn it on. And then as you do the movement, as the load gets greater, you pull the core in to match the load. So the maximum load is when it's at a 90-degree angle to the axis of my body. Okay, so here I've got less load. But right here, you see, I'm at a 90-degree angle to the cable. So the maximum load is there. From there, it gets easier. And from here, it gets easier. So as the load increases, you have to do what I call a gradiated recruitment. If you just go, then you're not training your body to be efficient. So what it'll do is make you very tired, and you won't last very long, because you're like someone driving around town with their foot on the floor all the time, racing from stoplight to stoplight, and can't figure out why it's costing you, thousands of dollars for gas every month, okay? So we'll inhale. Now the string, you'd put the string on, you'd pull your belly off the string. When the string goes loose, that lets you know. So what happens if you have outer recruitment issues, which means your rectus abdominis is doing the work of the deep abdominal wall, and you go to do the exercise, your big muscles will stick out and the string will get tight. So the goal is to keep the string loose. So I would inhale, and as I get moving here and I feel the load increase, I just pull in to match the load. And as it comes back, I relax. Inhale, set the core, tighten as I go through the sticking point, and release. Okay? So you want to learn to increase. So for example, if somebody was pushing on my hand, if they were only pushing a little bit, I would only need a little recruitment. If they were pushing harder and harder and harder, I would have to stabilize with greater intensity. But if I just pulled in real hard and they're only pushing with a little bit of pressure, I would just burn out real quick. Okay, so now think of how fast soccer is, and the jumping and the moving and the heading and the flipping around and changing direction and backwards. Wow, you gotta get past the point where you've got to think about this. So we've got to go past the point where we have to think about it, which is called conscious competency, and do enough core work in the gym skillfully using mirrors, ideally with a skilled CHEK professional or someone that really knows what they're doing, which is rare, which is why I started the CHEK Institute. Then you build your awareness up and you program the nervous system so that it automatically does it. Now, the paradox is this is what your body should be doing all the time. It's just because people eat so much junk and don't get proper rehabilitation and don't exercise correctly that our bodies start breaking down, so we have to re-educate and re-educate and re-educate. So these are actually neuromuscular re-education exercises so that when you go out to play soccer, you don't have to think about it. You just go play soccer. The difference is people are getting injured all around you, and they wonder, why the hell do you never get injured? Well, it's because you eat good food that doesn't inflame your guts. You know how to stretch properly. My book shows you how to test yourself so you can see where your muscles are out of balance and how to correct that. It shows you how to do the right mobilizations to get your spinal joints and your structure working properly. It shows you how to isolate the core muscles to develop their strength and then integrate them back into the system and things like this. So that what happens is you get to the point where you have unconscious competency. If you drive a car for any length of time, you remember when you first started driving a car, if someone tried to talk to you, you said, I gotta focus, because you were not competent at an unconscious level. You had to focus so any other input distracted you. But once you get good at driving a car, you say, hey, how you doing? You can tell jokes, you can dance in the car and drive and still make it through the intersection and shift the gears because you're unconsciously competent. So the goal with all these isolation to integration to strength development to power development exercises is to build the system progressively so that you have motor intelligence and motor vocabulary, which means just like you have to have enough words of any new language to speak and communicate, you have to have enough movement skill for soccer in order to have the body intelligence to play soccer without thinking about it, because you have to run around thinking, I got to remember to suck my belly in, then you're going to miss what's happening and you're going to be not very good at soccer, right? Because you're too busy thinking about your body, okay? So the goal is to go through these developmental phases, develop unconscious competence, so when you step on the soccer field, you feel good about yourself. You know, your body's working really well, it's well integrated, it's strong, it's fast, it's coordinated, it's flexible, it's agile, and then you go kick some ass. And that's my soccer lesson for you today. If you want to learn more, go to CHEK You can find CHEK professionals all over the world that are highly trained and skilled, that are experts at this, that can help you and do a proper skilled evaluation and build you from exactly where you're at and look at your diet and lifestyle factors that could be causing you structural problems, help dial you in so you can win. See you next time.